My neighbor has been living in my attic for 3 years, and I just found out. Story. A Redditor shares how they kept hearing strange noises in their house, footsteps, creaking, and even faint whispers. They brushed it off as old house sounds until one day, they found a half-eaten sandwich in their kitchen that wasn't theirs. After setting up cameras, they discovered their neighbor had been secretly living in their attic for 3 years. The neighbor had created a hidden entrance through a loose panel in the ceiling and would come down at night to steal food and use the shower. The Redditor called the police, and the neighbor was arrested, but the creepiest part. The neighbor had been keeping a detailed journal of their daily life, including their routines, conversations, and even their dreams. 2. I found a secret society in my small town, and they want me to join. Story. A user moves to a small, seemingly peaceful town for a fresh start. One night, they stumble upon a strange gathering in the woods, people in robes chanting around a bonfire. They quickly leave but are approached the next day by a mysterious man who hands them an invitation to join the Order of the Eternal Flame. Curiosity gets the better of them, and they attend a meeting, only to discover the group is involved in bizarre rituals and has ties to unsolved disappearances in the area. The Redditor tries to leave, but the society won't let them go, claiming they've seen too much. 3. I bought a used camera at a garage sale, and the photos are haunting me. Story. A Redditor buys an old film camera at a garage sale for $10. When they develop the film, they find photos of a family they don't recognize, smiling, happy, and normal at first. But as they go through the roll, the photos get darker. The family starts looking distressed, and in the last photo, they're all staring directly into the camera with blank, soulless eyes. The Redditor does some digging and discovers the family in the photos went missing 20 years ago, and the camera was the only piece of evidence left behind. Now, they're seeing the same family in their dreams and hearing whispers when they're alone. 4. I accidentally hacked into a dark web server, and now they're after me. Story. A tech-savvy Redditor shares how they were messing around with their computer one night and accidentally accessed a dark web server. At first, they thought it was just a random glitch, but they soon realized they had stumbled upon a network of illegal activities, human trafficking, drug deals, and worse. Before they could log off, a message popped up, "We see you." Since then, they've been receiving threatening messages, their devices have been hacked, and they're convinced they're being followed. They're terrified but don't know who to trust or how to escape. 5. My best friend faked their death, and I don't know why. Story. A Redditor's best friend supposedly died in a car accident a year ago. They were devastated but tried to move on. One day, while scrolling through social media, they see a photo of their dead friend at a cafe in another country. They dig deeper and find out their friend faked their death and started a new life under a different name. The Redditor confronts them, but the friend refuses to explain and begs them to let it go. The Redditor is torn between respecting their friend's wishes and uncovering the truth. 6. I found a hidden room in my apartment, and what's inside terrifies me. Story. A Redditor moves into an old apartment and notices a strange, out-of-place wall in the bedroom. One day, they accidentally push the wall, and it opens to reveal a hidden room. Inside, they find old furniture, dusty journals, and a locked chest. When they open the chest, they find photos of themselves, photos they never took. Some are from years ago, and others are from just last week. They realize someone has been watching them for years, but they have no idea who or why. 7. I adopted a dog, and it's not what it seems. Story. A Redditor adopts a stray dog from a shelter. At first, the dog seems sweet and loving, but over time, it starts acting strangely. It stares at them for hours, growls at empty corners, and seems to know things it shouldn't, like their daily routine and even their thoughts. One night, they wake up to find the dog standing on its hind legs, staring at them with glowing eyes. They try to get rid of the dog, but it always finds its way back. They're convinced the dog isn't a dog at all, but something else. 8. I found a diary in a hotel room, and it's from the future. Story. A Redditor stays at a hotel and finds a diary in the nightstand. At first, they think it's just an old guest's journal, but as they read, they realize the entries are dated years in the future. The diary describes events that haven't happened yet, including natural disasters, political scandals, and even personal details about the Redditor's life. They're terrified but can't stop reading. The last entry is a warning. Burn this diary, or you'll regret it. 9. I swapped lives with a stranger for a day, and it went horribly wrong. Story. A Redditor participates in a social experiment where they swap lives with a stranger for 24 hours. At first, it's fun. They get to live in a fancy house, drive a luxury car, and experience a completely different lifestyle. But things take a dark turn when they discover the stranger's life is filled with danger. They're chased by unknown assailants, framed for a crime they didn't commit, and forced to go on the run. When they try to contact the experiment organizers, they realize the whole thing was a setup. 10. I found a message in a bottle, and it's from me. Story. A Redditor finds a message in a bottle while walking on the beach. When they open it, they're shocked to find a letter written in their own handwriting, but they have no memory of writing it. The letter warns them about a series of events that will happen in the coming weeks, including a near-death experience. At first, they dismiss it as a prank, but when the events start unfolding exactly as described, they realize the letter might be from their future self. 11. The man who disappeared from the hotel room. I was on a business trip and checked into a small but decent hotel near the city center. Everything was normal. I dropped my bags, took a shower, and watched some TV before falling asleep. But when I woke up, something felt off. My phone wasn't on the nightstand where I left it. My suitcase was missing. Even my shoes were gone. Confused, I checked the closet and the bathroom, completely empty. I rushed downstairs to the front desk and demanded to know what happened. The receptionist gave me a confused look. "Sir, we don't have a record of you staying here." I thought she was joking. "What? I checked in last night. Room 312. She shook her head. "Sir, room 312 has been vacant for weeks." Panic set in. I insisted they check the security footage. When they did, my stomach dropped. The footage showed the lobby at the time I checked in, only I wasn't there. The camera showed an empty front desk, no sign of me entering. It was like I had never been there at all. 12. The neighbor who dug a tunnel under my house. I moved into my house 3 years ago. The neighborhood was quiet, the people friendly, except for my next-door neighbor, Mr. Evans. He was a reclusive old man who never spoke much, always watching from his window. At night, I started hearing strange noises, low rumbling sounds, like something shifting underground. I assumed it was just pipes or old house creaks. But over time, it got worse. One night, I was in my basement when I heard a muffled thud, and the wall shook. My heart pounded. I put my ear against the concrete and swore I heard breathing. I called the police, convinced something was wrong. They came, inspected the basement, and found nothing. But I wasn't crazy, so I did some digging, literally. The next day, I broke open a section of the basement floor. What I found made my blood run cold. There was a tunnel leading directly under my house. And at the end of it, a small, makeshift room, with a chair, a table, and photos of me taken through my own windows. Mr. Evans disappeared the next day. 13. The babysitter who wasn't human. We hired a babysitter from a trusted agency for our 2 kids. Nothing fancy, just someone to watch them while we went out for dinner. When we got home, everything seemed fine. The kids were asleep, and the babysitter smiled politely before leaving. Later that night, I checked our home security cameras, just out of curiosity. The footage started out normal, but as I fast-forwarded, something made me freeze. At one point, the babysitter walked into the living room and just stood there. For nearly an hour, not moving, not blinking, just staring at the wall. Then, at 11:45 p.m., something impossible happened. On the screen, the babysitter's face began to change. Her mouth stretched too wide, her eyes blackened, and her head twisted completely backward. And then, she turned to face the camera, as if she knew I was watching. My stomach dropped. I ran to my kids' room, but they were sound asleep. The next morning, I called the agency. They had no record of the babysitter we hired. 14. The apartment that changed overnight. I lived in my apartment for over 2 years. Same layout, same furniture, same everything. But one night, I came home late and immediately knew something was wrong. My couch was against the opposite wall. My TV remote was missing. The framed picture of my parents. Gone. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I moved things and forgot. But then I walked into the kitchen. The entire room was mirrored. The fridge, the cabinets, even the stove, were on the wrong side. My hands started shaking. How could someone flip my kitchen overnight? I ran out and asked my landlord if he had sent maintenance in. He looked at me like I was crazy. "Sir, this is exactly how your apartment has always been." I rushed back inside, heart pounding. I grabbed my phone and checked old pictures of my place. My blood ran cold. The photos showed my apartment exactly as it was now. But I know it wasn't like this before. It was as if reality had shifted. 15. I accidentally discovered my wife's secret double life. I was cleaning out the attic when I found an old laptop buried under a pile of junk. It wasn't mine, so I assumed it belonged to my wife. Curious, I powered it on. It was locked, but I tried her usual password, and it worked. That's when I saw the email inbox. The messages weren't from me. They were from someone named Daniel, and they went back almost 10 years. Confused, I clicked on one. "I miss you, Alina. When will you leave him?" My stomach dropped. My wife's name isn't Alina. It's Sarah. Panic set in as I scrolled through messages. The emails talked about a different life, different places she'd lived. Bank accounts under another name. Even a marriage certificate, but not with me. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. When my wife came home, I confronted her. Her face turned pale. And then, she smiled. "You weren't supposed to find that." 16. The town that doesn't let you leave. I was on a solo road trip when I decided to stop at a small town to rest. It wasn't on my map, but it had a gas station, a diner, and a motel, everything I needed for the night. The people were polite but strange. They smiled too much, their eyes lingered a little too long. The motel receptionist handed me a key without asking my name. The next morning, I packed up and hit the road. But after an hour of driving, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The town was in front of me. I had driven straight and never turned around. Confused, I tried again. Different route, different direction. Same result. I stopped at the diner and asked the waitress, trying to stay calm. "How do I get out of here?" She smiled, setting down my coffee. "Why would you want to leave? No one ever does." I didn't drink the coffee. 17. The revenge of the quiet guy at work. There was this guy at my office, let's call him Greg. Greg was quiet, always polite, but people walked all over him. The boss, especially, loved making him the butt of every joke. One day, Greg walked into work looking different. Confident. He handed in his resignation letter and walked out without saying a word. The office burst into gossip, laughing about how he couldn't handle the pressure. A week later, things started going wrong. First, our biggest client dropped us, no warning, just gone. Then our internal software started glitching, emails disappeared, files were corrupted. The boss was losing it. One night, I stayed late and saw something chilling. On an old company login screen, a single name was typed in the admin panel. Greg. It turns out, Greg wasn't just an employee, he was the son of the company's founder. The company was his, and he had let the boss run it, until he'd had enough. 2 months later, we were bankrupt. Greg, he bought the building and turned it into a coffee shop. I heard he gives free drinks to employees who used to work there. Except the boss. 18. The internet friend who wasn't real. For years, I had this online friend, Sarah. We met in a gaming forum, played together, chatted daily. She was funny, kind, and over time, she became one of my closest friends. We never met in person, but that didn't matter. Until one day, she suddenly stopped replying. I was worried, so I searched her username, only to find something terrifying. Her account had never existed. Every forum, every message, every trace of her was gone. Even my old texts had somehow disappeared. It was as if she had never been there at all. Panicked, I went to my emails. At least those would be there, right? I found one. The subject line just said, "Forget me." I tried responding, but the email bounced back. No such address. That night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed. A notification popped up from an unknown number. It was a single message. "You were never supposed to remember. _19. The lottery winner who vanished." A guy in my town won the lottery. Not a small amount, $350 million. He was everywhere on the news, smiling with his giant check. His family, his coworkers, even distant relatives suddenly showed up to celebrate. 2 days later, he disappeared. At first, people assumed he left to avoid the attention. But as the days passed, weird details started surfacing. His car was still in his driveway. His bank account hadn't been touched. His phone was found on his kitchen counter, screen cracked, like it had been dropped in a hurry. There were no signs of a break-in. No ransom note, just a man who had everything one day and was gone the next. Then, months later, something strange happened. His bank account, frozen by the authorities, started making withdrawals. Tiny ones, from different ATMs around the world. A few $100s here, 1,000 there. But when the security footage was checked, there was no one at the ATMs. Just a glitchy, flickering screen. _20. My mom has a twin she never told us about. It was a normal day until I saw my mom at the grocery store. Or at least, someone who looked exactly like her. Same face, same clothes, but when I called out, she just gave me a blank stare. "Mom," I asked. She tilted her head. "Sorry, do I know you?" My heart pounded. I pulled out my phone to text my real mom. She replied instantly, saying she was at home. I ran out of the store and drove back as fast as I could. When I got home, my mom was in the kitchen, making dinner like nothing was wrong. I told her what I saw, expecting her to laugh. But her face, she turned pale. Without a word, she grabbed my arm and whispered, "If you ever see her again, don't speak to her. Don't follow her. And whatever you do, don't let her see where we live." 21. The man in the closet. When I was a kid, I was terrified of my closet. Every night, I swore I could hear faint breathing from inside. My mom brushed it off, saying it was just my imagination. One night, I finally worked up the courage to check. I crept to the closet, heart pounding, and yanked it open. Nothing. But something felt off. Years later, we moved out, and my parents hired a company to renovate the house. A week later, my mom got a call from the workers. Behind the wall of my old closet, they had found a tiny hidden room. Inside, a small, tattered mattress, a pile of old candy wrappers, and a rusted pocket knife. Someone had been living there. 22. My roommate wasn't human. I had a roommate in college who was weird, but I figured, hey, we're all a little weird. He barely ate, rarely blinked, and at night, I'd hear him whispering in a language I didn't recognize. One night, I woke up to him standing over my bed. I shot up. "Dude, what the hell?" He tilted his head. "You're awake." I don't know why, but something in me told me not to answer. I just pretended to fall back asleep. He stood there for a long time before finally leaving. The next morning, all of his things were gone. His side of the room was empty. When I asked the dorm supervisor about him, she looked confused. "You never had a roommate." 23. The YouTube video that knows you're watching. I love deep diving into creepy YouTube videos. One night, I found a weird, low-quality clip titled, "You Shouldn't Be Here." The video was mostly static, but at the 15-second mark, the screen flickered, and for a split second, I saw an image of my own bedroom. I closed my laptop so fast it nearly broke. The next morning, I checked my browser history. The video was gone. No trace of it anywhere. Then, an email arrived. No sender, no subject, just one line. "Don't watch again." 24. The family that disappeared overnight. My neighbors were a normal family. Mom, dad, 2 kids. We weren't close, but we'd nod at each other in passing. One day, I came home from work and saw that their house was empty. Not just empty, abandoned. Like they had never lived there. Their cars were gone, the windows were bare, and the grass was suddenly overgrown, like no one had touched it in months. I asked my landlord what happened. He gave me a confused look. That house has been empty for years. But I had literally spoken to them the day before. 25. The basement door that shouldn't exist. I was house sitting for a friend when I found a door in the basement I had never noticed before. Curious, I tried to open it. Locked. When my friend got back, I casually asked, "Hey, what's behind that basement door?" His face went pale. "What door?" I laughed. "The one near the laundry room." He shook his head. "That house doesn't have a basement." I took him downstairs to prove him wrong. The door was gone. 26. The forgotten passenger. I was taking the subway home late at night when I noticed something strange. The man sitting across from me looked off. His clothes were outdated, like he belonged in a different decade. His face was too still. I glanced at my phone for a second, and when I looked up, he was gone. The thing is, the train never stopped. The doors never opened. But on the seat where he had been sitting, there was a faded newspaper from 1978. 27. The midnight construction sounds. For weeks, I kept hearing construction noises outside my apartment between midnight and 3 a.m., hammering, drilling, even distant voices. But when I looked outside, there was nothing. Just an empty lot. One night, I finally went downstairs to check. The noises were louder up close, like something was right in front of me. I reached out, feeling the air where the sound was coming from, and my hand touched something solid. Something that wasn't visible. I ran back inside. The next morning, I saw a missing persons sign near the lot. The photo. It was me. 28. The woman in my wedding photos. After our wedding, my wife and I got our photos back. They were perfect, except for one thing. In the background of multiple shots, a woman in a black dress stood watching us. We had a small wedding, just close friends and family, and no one recognized her. When I zoomed in on her face, my blood ran cold. She looked exactly like my wife. But older. My wife refused to talk about it. That night, she had a nightmare. She woke up shaking, whispering. She found me. 29. My dead grandma called me. My grandmother passed away last year. It was hard, but I was healing. Then, 2 nights ago, I got a phone call from her number. I answered, heart pounding. At first, there was only static. Then, a voice whispered, "Don't let him in." I hung up immediately. The next morning, my front door was wide open. 30. My reflection moved on its own. I was brushing my teeth when I noticed something weird. My reflection was a second behind me. If I lifted my hand, it took an extra second to follow. If I blinked, it blinked after me. I leaned in closer. It smiled. I didn't. I turned to run, only to see my bedroom door was already closed. My reflection was still looking at me. And then it raised a finger to its lips. Shish. 31. The roommate who lived in the walls. A Redditor shared how they discovered their roommate had been secretly living in the walls of their apartment for months. The roommate had cut a small hole behind a bookshelf and would come out at night to steal food and use the bathroom. The op only found out when they heard scratching noises and decided to investigate. The roommate had set up a makeshift bed, a stash of snacks, and even a small fan inside the wall. 32. The wedding crasher who stole the groom. At a wedding, a random woman showed up claiming to be the groom's true soulmate. She caused a scene during the ceremony, but security removed her. Later, during the reception, she somehow convinced the groom to leave with her. The bride found out the next day that the groom had flown to Vegas with the woman and married her. The Redditor was the bride's best friend and shared the story to warn others about psychic wedding crashers. 33. The neighbor who thought they were a ghost. A Redditor's neighbor believed they were a ghost and would haunt the OP's house. The neighbor would leave cryptic notes, move objects around, and even dress in all white to float around the yard at night. The op eventually confronted the neighbor, who claimed they were trying to communicate with the living because they were stuck in purgatory. The story ended with the neighbor moving away, leaving behind a creepy doll in the OP's mailbox. 34. The dog that could predict breakups. A Redditor's dog had a strange habit of growling at their partner a week before they broke up. This happened 3 times in a row, and the op started to believe their dog had a sixth sense for toxic relationships. The final straw was when the dog growled at their fiancé, and the op called off the wedding. A month later, they found out their ex had been cheating on them the entire time. 35. The Airbnb host who watched asleep. A couple rented an Airbnb for a weekend getaway and noticed strange things happening. Items would move, the thermostat would change on its own, and they heard footsteps at night. On the last day, they found a hidden camera in the smoke detector. When they confronted the host, he admitted to watching them sleep because he thought they were the perfect couple and wanted to learn their secrets. 36. The grandma who faked her own death. A Redditor's grandmother faked her own death to see how her family would react. She staged a heart attack, called 911, and had a friend pose as a doctor to confirm her death. The family was devastated until she showed up at her own funeral, laughing and saying it was all a prank. The Redditor said their family hasn't spoken to her since. 37. The coworker who stole my identity. A Redditor discovered their coworker had been using their name, social security number, and even their photos to create fake social media profiles. The coworker had been catfishing people online and even applied for credit cards in the OP's name. When confronted, the coworker claimed they were living vicariously through the op because they were jealous of their life. 38. The cult that tried to recruit me at a gas station. A Redditor was approached by a group of people at a gas station who offered them free snacks and water. They seemed friendly at first, but things took a dark turn when they started talking about enlightenment and invited the op to their community. The op later found out the group was a known cult that had been recruiting people at gas stations across the state. 39. The ex who stole my cat and sent ransom notes. A Redditor's ex stole their cat and started sending bizarre ransom notes demanding $1,000 and a handwritten apology. The notes were written in crayon and included photos of the cat wearing tiny hats. The op eventually got their cat back after involving the police, but the ex still sends them photos of the cat every year on the anniversary of the heist. 40. The stranger who lived in my attic for a year. A Redditor kept hearing strange noises in their attic but assumed it was just animals. One day, they decided to investigate and found a man living up there. The man had been sneaking in and out through a loose vent and had set up a small living space with a sleeping bag, a hot plate, and a collection of the OP's missing belongings. The man claimed he was just passing through and had no idea how long he'd been there.